the Middle East! No justice! No peace! US out the Middle East! No justice! No peace! US out the Middle East! 1, 2, 3, 4! We don't want another war! 5, 6, 7 and 8! Stop the killing! Stop the hate! 1, 2, 3, 4! We don't want another war! 5, 6, 7 and 8! Stop the killing! Stop the hate! 1, 2, 3, 4! We don't want another war! 5, 6, 7 and 8! Stop the killing!
There are people who say that they can't be mad enough to start a war against Iran and Syria. Well, let me tell you this. The people in Washington, the US regime and the British regime are not noted for their rational behaviour. They said the same thing about Iraq. They can't be mad enough to attack Iraq, and they did. And the reason they did is because they were driven by corporate interests and they wanted to dominate the Middle East. And they still want to dominate the Middle East. And that is why all the signs are that they are planning, they are considering another war against Iran or against Syria. And we in the Stop the War Coalition are calling for the maximum possible unity.
So, can you introduce yourself?
I'm anonymous.
Anonymous what?
Anonymous, UK.
So, you're from the Occupy London movement, yeah?
Yep, you're supporting Occupy London.
And why have you been here in the anti-war protest against Iran and Syria?
Because again, war is something that shouldn't be ever committed in the act of anyone, especially against other human beings. You know, we shouldn't be killing people. There's no need for it. Let alone starting a war just for our own ends. Everything about it's wrong and it's completely unjust.
And we will people of the earth through. We're all here for a purpose, and it's really a wondrous time to be alive.
My name's Dan Ashman. I'm part of the Occupy movement. I've been staying at St Paul's since the 18th of October.
And why are you here in anti-war protest?
Because I think it's one of the founding principles which has inspired people to stay at St Paul's, that and the financial crisis, and also trying to understand how the world works, who's making the decisions and why they're making those decisions which have implications on people's international human right of the right to life. For some reason it's okay to bomb a country and deprive many people of their lives for a super objective. And then on other occasions it's not okay to do it, and we're just kind of trying to figure that out, and also to spread the word of peace and of unity, which is all important if we're going to create a stable, sustainable world for generations to come.
You think if the West involved in a war against Iran and Syria, how would it affect the life of the Europeans and Americans economically?
Economically, you probably won't see too much of a difference, as you haven't seen that with Afghanistan and Iraq. We do not feel it. It's an industry which keeps rolling. And that's very disconcerting because it means we're not empathising and connecting with the humans who are suffering as a result of our greed and of the proceeds which come from war, which is ultimately what we believe it to be for. And so really we've got to reconnect in the now, in the moment, with people around the world, civilians, innocent people who have done nothing wrong to anybody, and support them in their struggle for self-determination so that they can actually build a future for their children in security.
US out the Middle East! No justice! No peace! US out the Middle East! No justice! No peace! US out the Middle East!
Iranians will not surrender their rights. And let's be clear about this. Let's be clear about this. Let's stop shouting down. Stop shouting down. Let's be clear about this. Let's be clear about this. The US, prodded by Israel, they have no shame. They have no shame in telling lies, distorting the truth. And only yesterday, the U.S. defense officials told the Wall Street Journal that the United States is considering to use tactical nuclear weapons against Natanz and Fordo, against the military and against the nuclear sites in Iran. They will have no shame in using nuclear weapons for the first time after using them in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And they have actually no qualms, no shame in using this catastrophic weapon against humanity. But the unprovoked aggression that they commit, that can be prevented. They are in disarray. The political establishment of the United States and the UK, they are in disarray. Only a few days ago, in the Daily Telegraph, for all those papers, in the Daily Telegraph, Peter Jenkins, the ex-UK ambassador to IAEA, says that he supports those countries who support Iran, and Iran should be given the right for enrichment of uranium for peaceful purposes. So, now, who would have thought that Kenneth Pollock, that new conservative who wrote the book, The Case for Invading Iraq, which persuaded the liberals in the United States to support the invasion of Iraq, who would think that Kenneth Pollock now is against even sanctions against Iran? He's saying that this is a lose-lose situation. People in the West will even suffer. So even the establishment, and Leon Panetta himself acknowledges that there is no nuclear weapon program in Iran now. And if there is a weaponization of uranium, the IAEA will detect it immediately.
I'd like to say firstly that anybody who thinks that by being against the regime in Iran, this means you have to support a war by the Western powers, you are making the biggest mistake of your lives. The people who didn't like Saddam Hussein said exactly the same thing, and yet there were 1 million dead at the end of that war. They are building up the attack on Iran in just the way that they did in Iraq. What do we have here? Since the beginning of this year, we've had an oil embargo, we've had sanctions on banks, we've had the assassination of a nuclear scientist. Those things have been carried out by Israel, the United States and the European Union. They want to bring war yet again to the Middle East. They did this. You might have thought they would have learned from the lessons of Afghanistan. You might have thought they would have learned the lessons of Iraq. But they have learned nothing. And the people who support the wars have learned nothing either. We have to oppose a war on Iran, oppose a war on Syria, because these are not about democracy, they're not about freedom, they are about spreading the power of US imperialism, the people represented in this building here. And we are here today to say no war, no imperialism, and let's the question of the regime is a matter for the Iranian people. We here in the West have one duty, to oppose our own regime, and that is what we are doing. I'd just like... Sorry, I'm not moving to...
No, I think the sanctions are not an alternative to war, but a preparation for war. In two senses. They're meant to weaken the regime, meant to weaken it economically, meant to weaken the relationship between the regime and the Iranian population, and it's also meant to prepare the population in the West for a military attack. We know what happened when Iraq was the subject of sanctions. Soon it came to the point where our governments came to us and said, look, the sanctions aren't working, we have now to have a military intervention. I think if we want to understand the relationship between sanctions and the possibility of changing the regime in Iran, we need to look at the experience of the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. They didn't lead to a better situation for Iraqis, and they certainly haven't led to a better situation for Afghans. In fact, in Afghanistan, after 10 years of war, the Americans are now negotiating with the Taliban to have them back in government. So this is not a war that achieved regime change, it's a war that's going to achieve no regime change after 10 years of death and destruction. There is only one way, and this is very, very clear from the last year, there is only one way that regimes get changed in a progressive and democratic direction in the Middle East, and that's because the people of the Middle East do it themselves. The great example of the Egyptian revolution should be absolutely clear to anybody. The Egyptians did not ask for sanctions against the Mubarak regime. They did not ask for military intervention by the US and the UK. They formed a mass movement which became a revolution, which got rid of Mubarak and is still pushing for democratic change. And that is the only way in which fundamental and progressive change can happen in this or in any other area of the world.
And do you think who are the first victims of war?
Ordinary people are always the first victims of war. One of the terrible things that's happened in the course of the 20th century is that with each successive passing war, there have been greater civilian casualties than there have been military casualties. So nobody should wish for a single second Western military intervention on their population. Even in Libya, where the intervention was supposed to be to help the revolution, what has actually happened is that 30,000 Libyans have lost their lives. That can only happen when an advanced, sophisticated Western military regime is allowed to set its armaments loose on a civilian population, and this will be much, much worse if there's an attack on Iran.
And what do you think about the Green movement of Iran? Have you heard of it?
Yes, of course, I know a great deal about the opposition movement in Iran, and I'm sympathetic with those that want a more democratic state in Iran, who want rapid social change in Iran. But it must be absolutely clear at the same time that this cannot be advanced by calling on the Western powers to intervene. You will swap one boss for another boss, and that other boss will be no more interested in democratic rights than the old boss. Will be equally interested in exploiting the economic resources of Iran just the same as the old boss. Will be equally interested in taking the oil of Iran as the old boss. If you let the imperialists in through the door, they're like unwelcome dinner guests. They're very easy to invite in, but very hard to get rid of. There are many different opinions inside an anti-war coalition. But there may be people who are in favour of the return of the Iranian monarchy. There will be people who are in favour of a workers' revolution in Iran. There will be some people who are sympathetic, many people who are sympathetic to the Green movement, and some people who are critical of it. But the important point is this: we are all united in saying that the Western powers should not attack this country. Because if they do attack this country, no matter where you're from in Iran, no matter whether you're a monarchist, whether you're a supporter of Ahmadinejad, whether you're part of the workers' movement, whether you're part of the Green movement, you and your relatives are going to be killed on an absolutely industrial scale. And when that happens, all possibility of serious domestic politics in Iran will be set back.
Which we heard over and over again. It was this: we have to attack these countries because the people in these countries suffer under such tyranny that it is only with the help of the West that they can achieve change. Well, the Egyptian revolution is the standing condemnation of that argument. Because here is a people who, without the bombers and the bullets, the tanks and the soldiers of the United States or Britain or any of the Western powers, pulled down a 30-year dictatorship on their own. And I will tell you now why even after a year's still further struggle, there is not one single Egyptian revolutionary who will ask for support from the United States or military assistance from the United States, and it is this. They are still being shot down in the streets by Egyptian soldiers who are using American bullets and American weapons. So why would they ask for help from their killers?
The fact that in Iran there is an existing democracy movement. In Syria 4,000 people have already died. I believe that we need a form of dialectical fight at the same time against the war, which is the main danger at the moment. But we have to explain that our position is from the position of people who are at the same time worried about the violation of human rights in Iran, and there are people who are part of the democracy movement in Iran. I believe that hopefully next time in the next demo or in other kind of Stop the War coalitions meeting, they're going to be speakers who belong to Iran's opposition, who are people who are either critical or oppositional to Iranian regime. Because I believe that the war and sanctions are going to damage the democracy movement in Iran more than anything else. We should not forget that America has damaged democracy in Iran twice. One in 1953, the coup against Mossadegh, and second time by supporting Iraq, which allowed the Islamic factions of the revolution 79 to destroy other factions, to destroy the left, the secular aspect of the revolution. But this time, if a war happens, or if the sanctions get deeper, it's going to be a massive blow to Iran's democracy movement. We should remember that in the last 33 years, the sanctions, which have been much weaker than the new sanctions, have already given a much higher hand to the darkest factions of Islamic regime. Who has won out of sanctions? Revolutionary Guard, mafia groups, people who can import and export in their own hands secretly without going through the major channels. And so we have to be very, very careful. The sanctions are not less dangerous than the war. And so the war has already started on Iran, and it's going to be a massive blow for whoever wants to bring democracy to Iran. If the sanctions get deeper, if the war happens, we're not going to have democracy. We're going to have Chalabis and Karzais. We're going to have even more corrupt regimes. And I promise you, the same revolutionary guards who are running Iran today, they're going to shave their beard, they're going to wear ties, and they're going to be the new nomenclature, and they're going to be the new Putins of Iran. The time to oppose the war and sanctions is now. You do not wait for bombs to start hitting the country before going on the streets and oppose it. The ones who are going to suffer are not going to be the children of Khamenei. They're going to be normal, ordinary Iranian peoples and children. 1 million children died in Iraq from 1990 to 2003. And those were not Saddam's children. They were not ordinary working class and poor Iraqi children. It's a very, very dangerous situation. We should all be united. But in order to be united, we need to find a unifying line. I was critical of the line of the Stop the War coalition today, but I'm sure that the best way is to work with the Stop the War coalition, which is the biggest coalition in this country. The grassroots, the main body of Stop the War coalition is very varied, has many progressive elements in it, and we can work with them. We have to learn how to work with coalitions, but at the same time, we have to learn how to put pressure on the coalitions from below. And that's why today I said we should come to this demo with a banner saying that America and the regime at the same time, they are together destroying Iranian people's life and prosperity. And I believe that we should have said sanctions and war kill the democracy movement in Iran.
But do you think who are the audience of this kind of protests?
The audience is always, like in a coalitional demo, is going to be very varied. Today we had people who are supporting Bashar Assad's government, people who are supporting Khamenei's government, and people in the other side as well. But the demo got kind of divided halfway through by people who believe that a war can help Iran, because part of monarchies and part of people who are so opposed against Iran's regime, who've been blinded by the danger of imperialist intervention, they were part of the demo as well, and their chants were not very helpful. That divided the demo, and But we need to like work together. We need to know all different factions that stop the war movement in Britain. As other people in Germany or France or America, they should start working and knowing different elements. But it's important to have one massive coalition. Second, it's important to have a more nuanced line, which can unify different forces.
Thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 6, 7, 8.
Stop the killing, stop the hate.
1, 2, 3, 4.
We don't want another war.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Stop the killing, stop the hate.
1, 2, 3, 4.
We don't want another war.
No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
We don't want another war.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Stop the killing, stop the hate.
1, 2, 3, 4.
We don't want another war.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Stop the killing, stop the hate.
1, 2, 3, 4.
We don't want another war.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Politics needs votes. Politics needs your mind. Politics needs human beings. Politics needs lives. That's why, my friend, it's an evidence. Politics is violence. Why, my friend, it's an evidence. Politics is violence.